So the title is today, Does Non-Duality Judge Vladimir Putin? Vladimir Putin. Vladimir is such an unfortunate name in the West, I have to say. Isn't that Dracula's name? Vladimir? Vladimir Dracula? Where is it that Vladimir is like a really evil character? It must be Dracula, eh? Ich weiß es nicht, I don't know. Just to comment, it's a bit of an unfortunate name. So, okay. So as most of you are aware, maybe actually if you're in Western countries, it's being called an invasion. So Vladimir Putin has invaded Ukraine. And maybe you're in certain countries that are not aligned with the West and not democracies. Maybe you're being told that he is going in there to help ethnic Russians because they're being did he say genocide, or I can't remember what he said, but there's he's helping them and he's just going to stabilize that. That's all he's doing. So I don't know what country you come from. I would advise everybody to not listen to mainstream media and to try to follow information from alternative sources. Maybe if I get time later, I'll link some different sources in the box below. I don't know what Vladimir's intention is, but he's obviously doing something horrific in Ukraine, and I would call it an invasion, the same way that United States and United Kingdom, I don't know if there were other countries involved, but definitely those two, I'm sure there was, invaded Iraq in 2002. Like they went in there and they're changing something about what's happening in that country. And in both cases, in 2002, we were told the Western people were told it was because they had weapons and that Saddam Hussein was evil, and Putin is saying that it's because of NATO and because the way they're treating native Russians, ethnic Russians, I think they could say. So there's always like the stories from the different countries, and everyone can spin a story dependent on what suits them. But whatever the case is, whatever he's doing, which it looks to me and a lot of people report like it's an invasion, it's horrific to put violence onto anyone, no matter what the reason is. Even if there is horrific war crimes going in there, you can't fix it by war. Like, so even if that is the case, that's what they said with Saddam Hussein, that he was doing horrific things and building nuclear weapons, which they later couldn't find the nuclear weapons. But even if he is, war is never going to be the answer, because what you're going to do to that country is you're going to traumatize the people, and then they're going to come after you. Like, people can only take a certain amount of abuse before they crack, and a certain amount of violence before they begin to get into the mentality of revenge. I mean, imagine if it was you sitting there and your mother was horrifically raped and killed in a war. I mean, what would you do? Or your sister, or your child, or your daughter, or your son, or your father, your uncle, your best friend. Imagine if you saw that happen to lots of people, to your whole community. I mean, that is a disaster. It is a disaster. It is a disaster to use violence. I also understand the argument that if you don't use violence and they're going to kill you. I understand that argument, but it just seems like a nightmare. And I'm sure that what I'm saying is super simplistic and doesn't actually do justice to the situation. So the question is what does non-duality judge Vladimir Putin just like the way God would, like he is bad, So he is low consciousness, maybe you'd say in non-duality circles, or he is unconscious of himself, or low frequency or low vibration would be said in spirituality, in the hell realms. So before I answer that question, so that's what I'm saying other people might say, but before I answer that question, we have to talk about what non-duality is. Yeah, so what is non-duality? That's an amazing question. What is non-duality? So most people in this society go around with the perspective that they are somebody inside the bodies, which to me seems so weird now, like really alien and like bizarre. And they attach two things. So they attach to their status in society, where they live, their nationality, their ideas, their projections, their habits, their ways of being, their family, with their father or mother or child, or good or bad. They attach to this identity. There is an attachment to this identity and a belief that that is the experiencer. So that identity that you think yourself to be is an actual experiencer that's inside the body. And that person has free will and autonomy to move this body and to interact with all these separate objects in the world. And that is an illusion. The person in which you think yourself to be is actually an experience happening in who you actually are. So that which you believe yourself to be and even feel like you are is an experience in who you are. And when there is this identification with that person, there is suffering, what I call suffering, a contraction and a feeling bound to this body, and a taking life super seriously. And that isn't who you are. Who you are is beyond that. It's not a name, it's not a form, it's not an idea, it's not a feeling, a sensation. It's something that is experiencing, but yet cannot be found in anything, and is all things. You could call it no thing, while simultaneously being everything. It's not a consciousness which is separate from things, but we can call it consciousness as long as you don't feel like Consciousness is a separation, it's a position in some way. But I can't teach you who you are, because who you are is free. Who you are isn't something that you can get. It's total freedom. The you is appearing in it. So the you is thinking that, oh yeah, I'm listening to this and I'm understanding it, I'm nearly there, I get what she means. But that's always you. That which isn't you is watching without any opinion, any feeling. If you want to name the feeling of what it feels like, you could say love, but it's not personal love, it's not a love which you can own. It's just there experiencing. And the person cannot grab hold of that because the person is something that's in front of it. The problem is, so you have like the consciousness, if that's what you want to call it, and then the person, you're looking through this person, and this person is always owning everything and like grabbing hold of everything. And so even when I talk about this message, the person grabs hold of it and owns it. But that which is experiencing, the actual experiencer, which doesn't ever move, is always here, never leaves, never goes into time, that is free. But it's just this energy is in this, and that is always there. And that is actually hearing the words, but it's not judging the words, it's not interpreting the words, that's this part. But this part believes it's so real, it kind of takes up all the space and all the attention, so it feels like there is an energy that's contracted and bound to this. And when this seemingly is hidden, so you've forgotten that who you are is boundlessness, is freedom beyond the person, which is what you are. And so that's why it gets so confusing. You know, in the beginning I recommend meditation, and then this person does it, and then the person thinks that it's going to get to non-duality, whereas non-duality is here. That consciousness is here. It's not something about you improving yourself or you getting to something in time. It's what is timeless now, what is free now, what is alive and awake now, right here. Expanded, alive, vibrant. Person is always trying to be something. I am free. What is here that's not trying to be anything? It cannot be found, but yet is experiencing instantaneously. So you hear my voice and you think it's someone in time hearing, but actually there is simply hearing happening. There is seeing happening. There is feeling happening. And there's not really a subject which is in relationship to an object. There is that happening. It's instantaneous, this part of experiencing. It doesn't move in time, and it's like love. A person could describe it as love, but in itself it's just love without knowing it's love. It just is. But it's free, it's totally contented in what it is. And that's the experiencer of all things. That's what's looking out of my eyes now and looking out of those eyes. It's like if you put a light in a paper bag. So you put a torch in a paper bag and you poke lots of holes in the bag. The light shines out of all those holes, but it's one light, and it's like that. So it's one light looking through multiple angles. And the reason that you don't think my thoughts is because it's looking through that particular hole with that particular thoughts. It's not looking through this hole with these particular thoughts. So the thoughts remain in this body. I know that sounds weird. And this is free. It doesn't move in time, your essence. It's not something you can get in time. It's not something you can talk about. I mean, I know I'm talking about it, but you can't sit there and like really talk about this. It's just here, now, vibrating, free, in itself. So does this, which I'm describing, judge Vladimir Putin? No. This, what I'm describing, the Absolute, loves the Vladimir Putin, the Hitler, the Lisa, the you, everybody the same. It's absolute love. It does not judge. It doesn't mean that on the human level we don't cast it as bad and say it's bad. But from the absolute perspective, the nature of who we are is absolute love. So Putin is loved as much as everything else. In the Putin character, I suspect there is lots of suffering. But from the absolute, it is free, looking through that. And it's the same looking through as what's looking through there and here. So when Vladimir looks at you, when you look at him, it's the same looking in both directions. However, it goes through different filters, and his is a Vladimir Putin filter. So from the perspective of the Absolute, Vladimir Putin is perfection. Just like the sunlight's perfection, just like the pollution's perfection, the trees, the ground, the table, Khaleesi, maybe gnawing at a flea. whether there is no judgment. Consciousness doesn't desire for humans to be better or worse, or kind or loving. That's all personal. Often when this begins to be seen, which isn't a personal seeing, then it begins to change the human into most probably a nicer person. Like, we tend to do shitty things when we're suffering. Sometimes we do shitty things by accident. And sometimes it's like deeply unconscious. But when we purposely do shitty things, it tends to be through suffering. I can imagine that Putin has a lot of paranoia. And very detached from his feelings. But that's my judgment, and I don't know. Could be, surprisingly, that he's like the most happiest person alive. I doubt it, seriously. It could be like some sort of brain thing.